And we're here. We're live, not so live, but I'm recording. Um, Coast to Coast podcast. Me and Tori, we're here. It's NHL episode 34 for us. Going strong. I think this is like 6 or 7 weeks in a row now without missing a week, which for us
Mm.
it's going pretty good. So
Actually, it's been double weeks, really. It's been two a week because we do the fantasy podcast and then we do the regular NHL podcast. So
yeah, true.
sneaks up on me today. I forgot was we were recording for a second, and then I was like, "Oh yeah, it's Thursday. Let's get to it."
Yeah, I think in the past on a week like this, we would like touch base and be like, "Oh, there's not too much going on, nothing too crazy to talk about. Maybe we'll just skip a week." But I think just touching base, talking about some of the things we might have seen in games, it's going to be good. We're
Mm.
facing what?
We always got to do our 3 stars too. We got to
Yeah,
do that.
exactly. That's a good point. That's a good point. I guess the biggest news since last week is this just more postponements. It's not really big news, unexpected anymore. Um, Most recent news today coming out being that Edmonton Habs game pushed back an hour. It's only an hour as of right now. I don't know what's going to happen from that, but Puliarvi, um, I guess, is now under a COVID protocol. Something happened there. So
Of course,
the first
Ben's
potential.
gonna love hearing that.
Why did he just grab him?
Picked him up yesterday, I think.
Yeah. Well, I guess if anything, it's the first potential North Division hiccup. As of right now, that's all it really
Yeah.
is, and 1 hour difference. We have a few other teams that are.
The only thing I want to say with that though
Mhm.
is just with the Canadian teams, they probably have like a stronger process or protocol or requirement that I feel like them delaying the game is probably more than what would have been done if this was two American teams.
Maybe.
Probably thinking that it's probably being done better. Well, it's clearly being done better to some capacity in the North Division because so far there was 0% affected games. This could be the very first one.
Yeah. I don't know, like the NHL protocol, you would suspect it's the same across the board. You would suspect that the protocol the NHL takes would be more strict than that of anywhere else, than like America,
Mm.
Canadian or not. But yeah, it's the first whatever. It's nothing as of this second. We do have like another. I think since our last podcast, Colorado, Minnesota postponed still. Buffalo still hasn't played since last podcast. New Jersey still hasn't played. Um, St. Louis is going to be missing some games. Arizona going to be missing some games. Like I think we're up to like 8 teams right now over the course of this week that are missing games. So we didn't say it was going to be an easy season. It doesn't look like every team is gonna finish with 56 games. They're probably gonna have to figure out what they're gonna do. I'm sure. I hope behind closed doors they had a solution already planned for this kind of scenario. You would think, but then
Or at
again,
least multiple potential solutions.
yeah, like you would assume that they don't have this scenario that's been playing out as something that wasn't a possibility because we
Mm.
saw it everywhere else. I guess it's been a little different than other sports, but I haven't been following NBA, so I think that scheduling wise, those are the most similar. So I don't know how they've been handling things, but so that's
I
basically the
mean,
COVID update.
it's hard to relate between sports because they in basketball specifically they have the only non-American team playing out of Tampa, right? So everyone's still
True.
contained to the states, so there's no cross-country travel. So that's kind of hard to compare to. And it sounds like already the Blue Jays are going to be playing out of Dunedin, so that solves baseball's issue as well. So
Hmm.
I mean, it is kind of a unique challenge for hockey because they have a larger percentage of their league that would have to theoretically cross a border.
Yeah, that's
Um,
true.
and I don't know. Have you heard about what they're talking about and what they're doing about in the doing in the OHL? I don't know if they're doing it throughout this entire CHL, but specifically the OHL.
No, I is it the OHL that's having no contact this year?
No,
Okay.
that's not where I was going, but they're talking about that. So you know how in junior and whatever, there's a lot of like boarding, there's a lot of billeting where kids stay with
Yep.
families
Yep.
to play
Yep.
hockey and whatever. Well, right now, obviously, you can't really do that. But there's also contracts of Europeans, Americans, whatever, that are up here playing. And basically, what they're saying is now they're going to house their players out of their arena. They're going to be turning
Like into
like
a hotel.
basically like they're going to be modifying some of the suites like up top into like apartments or like bedrooms, like temporary bedrooms.
Yeah, like going away to the campus, hockey campus.
Yeah, exactly. Living on campus, right? So like in terms of trying to do stuff to mitigate and lower exposures, that's a pretty unique opportunity or unique decision that 6 months ago I would have said like that's an insane suggestion. But it kind of makes sense because you got to house them somewhere, right? And like if one person gets something in an extended family, now you got to shut down everything. And then like maybe a kid from Russia can't speak English that doesn't know what's going on, is living in a basement in quarantine and is like, oh, like, you know what I mean? Like it's
I hadn't heard
you
that
can
at
have
all.
yeah, you can have translators, you can have different people to provide, help, but they're also saying like they're joking on the radio today, being like, what if you're a rookie and like during practice you accidentally shoot a puck at your captain? Next thing you know, like you're living in the janitor's room or something like that. Like they're just joking that like you'd have to have some sort of, written guidelines or requirements that, you can't just be like, oh, this guy's being a dick, we're gonna go stuff him in the corner of the downstairs cold cellar, just because of that. So I mean, not that that stuff really
Hazing.
goes on, but
The hazings is something that used to be a little more prevalent.
a
I
little
think
bit
they've been
that
taking
we
it.
know about anyways. I
Yeah,
think a lot of it still happens. It's just done differently or done more under the table.
yeah, I can see that.
Hmm.
No, that's good to know. Is there for yeah, I only had a couple of things on here, and interestingly enough, this team keeps coming up podcast after podcast so far this season. The Columbus Blue Jackets are involved in some stuff, I guess, again this week. To me, the more interesting one is did you see this goal that was allowed and then not goal that was allowed?
Yep.
Yeah, so I was watching this. I was watching it live actually when this happened. The angle that they were showing at first it was like one of those situations where it was too unclear to be able to tell. I guess later on in the intermission there was more of an angle where you could see right down the line. I don't know why they couldn't access that angle to begin with. I thought at first it was just a TV broadcast that didn't have the right angle, and you would assume that Toronto head office or whoever they send it to had the right angle. But they allowed this goal that was an offside in the Carolina Columbus game. They allowed it. Was it Columbus challenged? So they lost the challenge and they end up getting a penalty. And then I guess they go to intermission because this was like right at the intermission time. And over the course of the intermission, they come back and like, oh, that goal shouldn't have counted. We're not going to give you the penalty, but we're still going to count the goal. Which is all alone weird in its own, but just now we have this precedent set for any future situation of this.
See, I don't know if it's a precedent being set because we already had the precedent. And the one thing that sucks is that when it really boils down to the basic thing, there is a rule that says once the puck is dropped after a review of a goal, you no longer can go back and change anything. It is official regardless of if the outcome is true or false.
Okay.
It's not the exact verbiage of the rule, but that's the summary of a rule in the rule book.
That makes sense.
And you drop the puck. But I'm not sure. I was hoping to see if you mentioned this part. So here's the problem that happened in the office is that because the referee has to put the headset on, and if a different referee puts a headset on, they have to sanitize it and everything. I guess the referee went over and he put the headset on, and what he heard is the NHL offices. And in the NHL offices, there's multiple bodies moving around, doing whatever. You can hear people coughing, sneezing, whatever in the background. Well, I guess in the office, somebody was just like, it's a goal, it's a goal. And that's what the ref heard. It wasn't like Colin Campbell in the NHL office being like, yes, it is, or no, it's not. It was just in surrounding, he heard, oh, well, it's a goal. Okay. Took his headset off. And I guess the NHL offices was freaking out and like pressing the panic button and calling back. And the problem is the ref went to go explain to the benches what was going on. But the other ref, because they had to sanitize the headset, they put it down because they weren't listening to it. So the NHL office was scrambling, trying to
I heard they were trying to they were signaling with like a strobe light even, and it just didn't catch the attention of anyone.
And they dropped the puck, and they knew, okay, well, damn, the puck's dropped.
Now you know what they got. They got to get some sort of vibrator in these refs' buttholes and just getting a vibrator or something like on their chest or
something, right? And we're gonna see something come out of this. This is the same thing that happens with everything.
Yeah.
Once a situation happens that is kind of unforeseen, it changes the situation.
Yeah.
And there will be change to this. The thing I liked least about it is things happen, mistakes are made. They recognize they made the mistake. But then when somebody asked them, why didn't you just add the time back on? If you're going to take the penalty away, take the goal away, they came out, add that 40 whatever seconds it was, and play 20 minutes and 40 something seconds, but play with a buzzer after the 40 seconds. So it doesn't like bleed into the new period.
Yeah.
Basically, you're playing it over, but then starting again at 20, regardless of the time. So that way, you're playing it over again. But if you go back to that time, if you're taking the penalty away anyways, you can't take half and not the other half. And their reasoning was, well, we have no precedent for it. It's like, well, you never had precedent for any of the rules until they became rules. We never had a precedent for offside situations until the Duchesne situation happened.
Yeah.
To say that, oh, well, we didn't go back because there was no precedent to do so. Don't you want to rather say, hey, there was no precedent, but we wanted to make sure we got it right because we know this situation could happen again in the future, and this is how we want it handled moving forward. They missed completely on the opportunity, and the fact that they had a lame excuse, like I don't think anyone holds them accountable for the issue that happened or the mistake in the time that's going on.
I'm sure do.
But outside the heat of it all, like if you were explaining, like, yeah, we screwed up and we tried to get it corrected, but we don't have the correct measures in place, and we now know this. Here's what we're gonna do, and we actually went back and played it to try and make it most correct.
Yeah,
that's the best we could have done. I don't think, regardless of whatever happened, I think no one would hold them accountable and be like, what else could you ask? You know, what else could you do? They did everything right, and I think they screwed the opportunity up entirely.
Yeah, totally agree.
That's my thought on it, but
yeah, it was definitely an interesting one. And like you said, what can we do now? It's, I guess, with that rule in place, once the puck's dropped, it is what it is. That game was insane to begin with.
To add on it too, like if we're talking about a goal that happened at the 4-minute mark, like 16 minutes ago, and you know they want to go back and play that 16 minutes again, I think that's wrong, and I think that's the part of the slippery slope that makes it hard. Because what if there's injuries? What if somebody breaks their leg and somebody has a fight, but then you go back and you're like, well, that never happened. Well, how do I have a broken wrist and this guy has a broken leg in this time that never happened?
The only aspect that I kind of relate to that is that game that happened last year, that half game that didn't count but counted with Anaheim and St. Louis.
Yeah.
But that's totally that's just grasping at straws at that point to try to compare even the two situations.
Yeah.
So we won't go too much.
And that was a medical emergency where like you didn't have an alternative option. It was forced upon you.
Exactly.
And like, I mean, when something like that happens, nobody really wants to be like, hey, moving on. Now let's cheer for our team. Everyone's just like not in the mood anymore, right? It's better to let everyone just kind of go home, you know, whatever, and then come back when they're back in the mood to kind of drink and have a good time. Maybe not just necessarily drink, but have a good time and have some food and whatever, right? Cheer for your team.
Yeah. Well, it looks like it didn't end there for Columbus's tough week. Laine finally suits up for him. I think he's got 3 goals already, actually, maybe 2. But it turns out, I guess, maybe you can talk more on this because I know you're the one that told me what actually happened, I think. But Torts ends up benching him for the remainder of a game, halfway through the game, third period at least. And then I believe he sits at the following game as well. So not a
I don't know about that.
no.
I don't know about the following game, but I know at least the third period. I think he didn't show up. I think he didn't come to practice. I think you maybe thinking of that.
I'm thinking of
Yeah,
Hudobin
he
for
missed.
that for didn't sleep. He slept through practice.
Oh, okay.
But
Okay.
I thought it was you. Maybe I read it somewhere
Yeah,
else.
no,
It's
it
something
was.
about an
So
assistant
line.
coach.
Yeah. So
Okay.
basically, what happened was, the exact details that came out that are like public is that I can't remember the guy's name. The assistant coach came to him with the iPad
Yep.
and was showing him something about a play that they didn't like about Laine. Well,
Yeah.
I guess during that time, Laine had either come back at him or made a rude comment or tried to almost put him in his place, and that wasn't the time or the place to do so. And I guess Torts had overheard it, and he kind of asked, "Okay, well, tell me what happened right now."
Mhm.
And when he heard that, he said, "We're not making a scene of it. You're not going on this the rest of the game. We'll address this after the game, and we'll go from there." And it sounds like when Liney came out, he basically took a lot, if not full
Yeah,
responsibility.
that's what I'm seeing
And
too.
it does sound like he probably said something stupid and was like, I mean, he's had a bit of a frustrating time, right, with the
Can
transition
I
and sitting out
imagine? He's a
COVID.
young man still
Like,
too.
and like, imagine that you're moving from Winnipeg to Columbus, from the Canada to the States. You go through quarantine, and then all of a sudden you're going into a team with a coach that expects everything from you. Like, to know all the details for a coach that's very detail oriented and stuff. Like, I gotta say, it probably would take at least 7, 8 games to pick up all that kind
Yeah,
of stuff, plus all the practices in between.
and
So like,
like you said, all that stuff's
it's tough.
going on. So like your emotions are probably thin, and like all it takes is one irk the wrong way, and you're snapping back a little
Yeah,
bit.
you're stressed out. Yeah, maybe you haven't been sleeping because you've been trying to stay up and learn the new system, stuff like that, right? So like,
Yeah.
it does sound like it was just not a great moment. Doesn't seem like Line is very happy it happened. It does seem like it's been addressed, and people are kind of
Yeah.
moving forward with it. So it seems like it wasn't anything beyond that.
Yeah, and on top of that, I think Dubois is starting today for his first game, so it will be interesting to see what he brings to the Jets against Ottawa. So maybe he'll be on the board a couple times, given how that goes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what else do we got?
I think we're gonna get into standings in maybe a podcast or two, but like we're kind of getting close to that 10 game mark where we can kind of look at stuff. But
Yep.
any surprises or any things that are kind of changing, just specifically your Northern Division? Any worries? Any bright spots? Anything you want to highlight there?
I think at the beginning of the season, I anticipated Vancouver to be a lot better, especially especially in the North. I think they're quite honestly easily the second worst team in this division now. Just coming off a week where they got pretty much manhandled by the Leafs 3 games in a row. Wasn't even that close. Um, Northwise, I don't know. Like, of course, for me, I know it's not so much you. You kind of had them pegged there. The Habs are up there. But after we did our preview podcast at the beginning of the season, I kind of was on board with everything you were saying about the Habs. So it's not as surprising as it is for I think more people. But the rest of it, like I think the top five in this division outside of Vancouver and Ottawa, it's gonna be a fight. Like it's good teams. I like what I've been seeing with the Leafs. They've been taking care of business the way they need to.
Especially when they're missing key bodies or what they deem key bodies for them this year.
Who are they? Like who? Like Jack
Thornton
Campbell,
and Simmons. Gordon
Simmons.
Simmons Campbell. Because I remember specifically on radio, they said something along the lines of, if we're sitting here talking 12 or 15 games in, and Jack Campbell is unavailable, and Freddie is struggling, we're gonna not be in a good mood. At that exact moment that they talked about that happening, Freddie's save percentage was under 900.
Yeah.
Jack Campbell was hurt, but they had one loss in regulation and one in overtime. So it's like, okay, well, like if they're struggling to stay on ice and struggling to have the bodies that they brought in to fill specific roles
Yeah.
because they're injured, even Robertson, their top young shooting kid, like he's hurt as well. So like he would have had a chance to go into a spot.
They're definitely
He can't.
their stars are being their stars right now, which is what any team with stars needs to do. Edmonton's having the same experience with McDavid and Draisaitl playing out of their skulls. Calgary's a little bit on the outside looking in right now, and that's because I think a lot to do with they're not having their star players step up. Maybe they just don't have the star power that those other two teams have in general. Winnipeg, they're hanging around, which is definitely interesting. And I suspect
I think Winnipeg's a tough team.
Yeah, they are too. I agree. If you're looking at the oh man, I'm looking at the standings on the left and I see the weird names. I'm like, I forgot that they they sold out the division names.
Oh yeah.
But we'll call it the Metro. That one's interesting. Pittsburgh's in a world of hurt right now. Out of all those teams, they've played somewhat the most, but like they have New Jersey and Buffalo behind them, but they've played less games. But they only got 1 point on those teams. 1 point on New Jersey, who hasn't played in like 10 days. There's concern there. They cleaned out their GM. A lot of things happening there. Boston's really showing. Boston shocked me. I think I remember at the beginning of all the teams this year, they're probably the most shocking for me. I just always underestimated that top line of theirs. I don't know why. Just always do.
It kills it though. And like I thought they'd be okay. Like I thought they'd be, probable playoff team, but 3-4. I saw them 3-4, and they might end up still being there. But they look good right now.
They do.
They look good. They look like the top team in that division.
I guess it's like one of those things. It's just that organization just seems to build winners. And maybe I discounted that far too much. Definitely.
And the other thing that we have to remember with Boston too is Boston has still some assets in their system. Like they're not near the bottom. They're not at the top, but they're not at the bottom either in terms of prospect ready capital. And they also have their picks. They also have cap space, and they also kind of have a clear hole. You can kind of call it in the top 4 on defense. Yeah. I mean, ideally in the top 4, that would push everything down to the right spot. So, like, I don't know if Florida's still looking at moving a Yandel or if Arizona's still going to actually move like an OEL or something like that. But I fully expect Boston to add a top 3, but a defenseman that can play in their top 4 to kind of ride shotgun with McAvoy to make them really, give them that extra push for the last couple of years before their guys kind of ride off into the sunset.
Yeah, for sure. What about this Central Florida division? I know there's definitely a team in there that's outperforming what your expectations were. You had them as potentially the worst team in the league.
Chicago?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I obviously didn't forecast Lankinen.
Yeah.
Lankinen's playing out of his mind. And I can't tell if it's going to continue or not, or I would pick him up in my other pool. I legit added him last week for 1 game, and it was the 1 game where he gave up like 5 goals and he lost, I think 5-2 or something like that.
I had him in my other pool as well, and after that game I was like, okay, his time's over. So I dropped him. Someone else grabs him, and now he's continuing. From what I've heard of different people, people like him. So
yeah.
I don't know.
I was watching the broadcast. Like, that's why I like to watch specifically the intros, because that's where they usually target goalies is, they introduce the one guy, talk him about a little bit, and then go to the other goalie, and they kind of do like a head-to-head, highlight of the goalies. And that's what I like to watch to learn about goalies, like when I don't know them from other markets and stuff. And when they're talking about him, they are basically saying like, future superstar goalie. And I'm like, whoa. Like, calm your horses.
Wait, is this in Chicago feed?
This was Chicago. It was the Chicago feed. So I went over to, I don't remember who they're playing. I want to say it was maybe Detroit or something. But I went to the other feed, and they actually were talking about him as well. And they were just like running down his junior history and stuff like that. And like, it got me understanding a little bit more. And it actually happened the same thing with Drieger in Florida, which is why I believe in what he's doing as well. So it's just, yeah, I don't know what I don't know. I don't think Chicago can hold on. But then again, they basically beat Edmonton last year in the bubble. Yeah. And they don't have Taves.
Yeah.
Arguably their leader and their top line center and their face-off winner who gets puck possession. Like, he's an important piece to their team. And they're missing Seabrook.
I think this division's wide open, to be honest. Like, other than Tampa Bay, after that, I think it's anyone's game.
I think Florida's still up there.
Florida's getting their first real test starting now. Like, until now, they haven't really had a whole lot of competition. So, depending on how they do, they are 7-1 and 2. But I agree, they've been good so far. Bobo hasn't looked amazing, but
except for the last 2 games.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It seems
I added Dreger, of course.
Yeah, it seemed like Dreger came in and was like threatened him a bit for his position. Probably not in reality, but it might have made him step up a little bit. I know as of right now, I seem to be way off on how Nashville is gonna do.
Yeah, I liked them early, but they had those 2 good games and then they have plateaued entirely. And actually, I was watching again goalie breakdown. They were showing the other day between Pekka Rinne and UC Saros, and they were showing their save percentage 5-on-5 versus their save percentage on the penalty kill.
Mm-hmm.
Their save percentage individually, one was like 971, the other one was like 969 or something. Some like 2 silly numbers. But then you look at the power play, and they weren't even starting with an 8. They were 7s.
Yeah.
Which is like obviously just atrocious, right? So that just says that their penalty kill is that bad. So you take a penalty, they're giving up a goal basically.
Yeah,
so
that's
like
not good. Yeah.
It's killer, right? So that's what's hurting Nashville. So
yeah,
I don't think you're completely off, but they're just had a couple overtime losses and they're having a bit of a hard time scoring. Like that's the other thing is Ryan Johansson missed time or is missing time, and I have Duchesne in my other pool, and I was like, if there's going to be a time Duchesne gets hot, it will be now. And now I'm just like, you know what? I don't think Duchesne is he's just irrelevant at this point.
Dog's going crazy. I don't know if you can hear him. Sorry.
A little bit.
Sorry. He's getting
That's
restless over here. We're talking smack about his favorite team, the Predators. So, last division. Let's just do a quick run through it. A lot of postponements in this one this week. Interestingly enough, the team with the least amount of games played is on top. Vegas, my home Dogs. They've lost once in regulation, twice overall, 8-1-1. I think I had them on top. I still see it that way. I still see this as like the 3-horse race at the top. I don't see much of a difference in that. My strongest opinion difference is probably who this 4th bubble team is going to be. I had Minnesota at the beginning, and now I'm starting to shift towards the Desert Dogs. The rest of it, I gotta admit, I'm pretty disappointed in how San Jose's come out to play so far. Expected them to show at least a little more fight than they had last season, but it seems like it's the same old story with them. Goalie issues,
complacency,
and not a lot of wiggle room to make maneuvers, right? Like their GM,
and no prospect capital, and I'm terrified for what the Sharks' future holds. Like, I think the absolute best case thing that could happen for them is if Vlasic decided that he wanted to retire, one of their goalies decided they wanted to retire, and something happens to Evander Kane where his contract gets voided. Like, honestly, that's their best way out.
Yeah, and like the chances of
it. You know how creative I am and try to look at different things, but like, I don't know.
Is this division
but within that team, it's something that it still plays the way I kind of expected. And I did make one change. I had Colorado on top. I am going with Vegas on top now, just because I did think they were going to move at least one piece off the team, and I thought maybe it would be one of their goalies. And I think that they're a way better team with that 2 goalie system than they are without it. So I think that it would be better off for them to move a guy like Marcia Show or a guy that maybe makes $3 or $4 million and not move a goalie yet. But that being said, with them keeping both goalies, and if they do keep both goalies, I think that they're probably the favorite.
Yeah, I don't anticipate a lot of movement on this team. They don't really. They're strong everywhere. They have the 2 solid goalies. They have 3.
It's more about cap. It's more about if
they're
they
right
can
up
afford
against
to keep it all.
Well, they can at least right now, right? So.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like next year might be an issue. We don't know, but that's next year, right? Like you got time.
I think they're
and like it's funny that
Vegas
I was
just
gonna say
sick
it's
of
funny that you
coming
mentioned the
short.
Coyotes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like I like the Coyotes and I like a lot of the players, but like from an asset management perspective, I think it's a terrible overstep. Um, like I think the Coyotes are going to end up leaving Arizona. Like I don't understand how their philosophy is going to work when you have an arena that's in the middle of nowhere. You don't have any public transit that can get people to and from the place. It's not a market where people will find a way to do it. Like if you put another team in Canada somewhere in like a high market, like people would drive and find a way to get to the rink, right? They'd carpool, they'd whatever. I don't see how they're going to make the money, and when you're a team like that, that has to recover assets, and you can't go into a 4-year rebuild. You go 4 years being irrelevant in sports and in a market that isn't a sports market or isn't necessarily a hockey market,
Yeah.
you're gonna lose too much of the market share. So like they need to find a way where 2 years from now, we're not talking about the stuff that happens. We're not talking about the penalties of the picks that they lost. We're not talking about these different people that were left or fired or stepped down from their organization and made them look lesser than a normal franchise.
Yeah.
Like, I just feel like Darcy Kemper is playing so well. He makes like what, $2 million or $3 million,
Makes
which
backup goalie money essentially. Yeah.
yeah, so you have any contender that has a starting goalie go down that's desperate enough, you can get a prospect, if not a really good one, and a first round pick for him, if not also a roster player. Like that's three
Yeah.
pieces, which then allow like Kessel's retiring in Arizona. He's done playing everywhere else, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Agreed.
So
Yep.
like I said Boston earlier. You ship OEL off to Boston, you get another first rounder and top prospect. Now all of a sudden you get Ranta, and Ranta has obviously had injury problems. But if you then put Ranta in Kemper's spot, Ranta will then be showcased. Now all of a sudden people are like, okay, he's played 30 games in a row without getting injured. Okay, he's put up 920 percentage. Now you not only got to trade Kemper, but you get to
Yeah.
trade Ranta and then move forward. Like
Yeah. The
I just
thing.
think it's a terrible opportunity to miss out on.
Yeah. The thing is, if they stay stagnant, right? They got these three teams that are pretty solidified ahead of them, and they have all these decent teams right behind them that are like they're young, they're up and coming, like the LA Kings. You got the Ducks, like the
Specifically LA. Yep.
LA
Yep.
and Ducks, right on their heels, and like
Yep.
give them a couple years, and they're gonna be hopping. So I'm with you. Like I could.
Mm.
It's interesting. Do they give up on what potentially could be a playoff team? Mind you, not a deep playoff team for the future. I don't think there's ever been a track record in the NHL teams doing that very often.
Yeah, and there's not, but I mean, like, if you want to kind of translate to a different sport, if you look at the Tampa Bay Rays, like a lot of the time they'll look at a pitcher's a pitcher. We
Mm-hmm.
don't need to necessarily need the name, but if we can sell a name for a lesser name but get the same production, and
Yeah,
then also get another asset while I'm at it,
they're a
do
good
it.
example.
So
Yeah,
like, if they got a first round pick, a top prospect, and a roster player for Kemper, they did the same with OEL, but then they kept Ranta. How much worse healthy? How much worse is a healthy Ranta than a healthy Kemper? There's a bit of a difference, but not
yeah.
enough
Well,
that
that's
will,
the
if
key
you're
to
already a
keeping him
playoff team,
healthy.
you're gonna fall out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but even when they
So
had Aiden Hill in there last year, well, actually, to be honest, they fell apart once Kemper went out last year, so that's not saying much.
yeah, I don't believe Hill is a very good goalie. Like he's good enough. He's another guy. He's
Yeah,
not bad. But he's not gonna be the guy that kind of moves them through. But that's where I personally would try to find another team that maybe has three goalies, or
yeah,
maybe has maybe you go and you turn around and you say to San Jose, hey, Dubnik hasn't worked out for you. We'll give you a fifth rounder. And they just essentially give you Dubnik, and then you go with Dubnik and
yeah.
Ranta, but then you have the picks for Kemper. Right? Like there's ways around it, right? And that was just me spitballing in 10 seconds. Like I could probably list off like 7 different
Yeah,
ones,
I
right?
do want to point out though that one point during the rant over the past 5 minutes, you said you like the Coyotes. I don't know if we've heard that before.
Yeah. And it's more that I like them more than the other teams that are competing. Like Anaheim is a solid team with a really good goalie. They cannot score. They're clearly holding their prospects away from this mess of what this season is.
Yeah.
And they're about to, the AHL is about to start too, right? So that's the other thing that we have to consider is that the AHL is about to start. I believe it's coming up this week or the week after.
Soon, yeah.
And it's really soon. So a lot of the players that are being stashed on teams' taxi squads are now going to be assigned to the Marlies. Sorry, minors. I shouldn't say Marlies. The AHL, whatever, the camps. Which then once people are assigned to minor league camps, it opens up all these spots, opens up all this money that's tied up in, like, you're obviously not going to sign a guy off free agency or trade for a body when it risks you having to waive one of your kids, right?
Yeah.
So now that the AHL starts, you tuck your kid down. Now you have an open roster spot. Sure, I'll take on that body, like a Virtanen or like a Bennett or these other guys that are lesser names that are asking for trades. I think that's when you're going to start to see some of the shuffling, or, you know, we need a fourth line guy who can win faceoffs, or we need a sixth defenseman, or we need a number 3 goalie. Like these kind of weird, very niche trades are going to start happening once all these young guys are tucked down. So that's going to be something that people will want to watch out for over the next 10 days or so.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Is it time?
It's time for the 3 stars.
It's time for the 3 stars of the past week. Let's do it. All right, do you want me?
I didn't see you fill yours out though.
Oh,
yeah, you kicked them off because I didn't see it.
I put it in the spreadsheet. I forgot that you made a tab for it. So we'll just go for here. So for me, I'm giving the 3rd star to Patrick Kane, and a lot of this has to do with the way Chicago's been playing. They went 3-0 last week, and he's a big part of that. 6 points, 6 points, and it's Patrick Kane. He's pretty much, like I said at the beginning of the season, I gave them a little bit of an edge over Detroit because of the Patrick Kane factor. I just think he's trying to put his team on his back along with the rest of their goalie and all that. So I gave it to him this week as my 3rd star. For my number 2 star, I gave it to Andrei Vasilevsky. The guy's been unreal. Basically played every game for Tampa Bay this year except the one. I have his season stats written down, and specifically, I think he only played 2 games last week, but both the games were, I think, 3 games in a row now. He's letting 1 goal.
I know his GAA is 1. I know that much.
Yeah, for last week it was. Yeah. Overall in the season, it's 1.8, which is still unreal. 9.36 save percentage, and he's got 8 wins already on this short season. So
he's probably gonna win the Vezina.
At this rate, it's pretty much without a question. If he keeps that up. And for my number 1 star, honestly, I gave it to Austin Matthews. There's a lot of Leafs I considered. The Leafs have just been on a tear, and I'm not a huge fan of it because I've always had a little bit of a hatred towards this team at certain times, but it's hard to hate this team the way they've been playing. I like Austin Matthews a little bit too. 5 goals, 1 assist last week. 2 of them were game-winning goals. I think the Leafs went 4-0. What can I say? I'm giving my number 1 star to Mr. Austin Matthews.
And on top of that, he had 22 shots in 7 days. And he was ranked. This isn't the end all be all, but what I try to look at to help me pick these stars is I go to our fantasy season and I rank all players by the last 7 days and see kind of who stands above everyone else.
The only downside to doing it that way is it doesn't give the credit to the defenseman as much as it can. So over the course,
but I did give recognition to Hedman last week.
You did, yes.
I won't be ignoring defensemen. They'll deserve standouts when they get it. But you're right, it does kind of damper their possibilities of being recognized a little bit. But it's funny because I didn't see your 3 stars until kind of just now, and I'll go through mine. But we have one of the same stars.
That's fine.
My 3rd star is actually Freddy Anderson.
Yeah.
I was debating between Vasilevsky and Anderson, and to be completely honest, it was a no lose either way. Because Freddie's my boy for being a Leaf fan. Like, he's one of my favorite Leaf goalies. He's probably 2 or 3 on my all-time Leaf goalie favorite list behind Potvin and Cujo. But he's slowly approaching, if not passing Cujo. But I don't think he'll ever pass Potvin. for me. But Vasilevsky's my stud for fantasy, so like it was an easy decision either way.
Mm-hmm.
But Freddie Anderson, 4 starts, 4 for 4, won all 4 of his starts.
Yep.
He had most amount of saves in the NHL in the last 7 days, which is pretty impressive, especially when you take into consideration that was before mostly. Well, Mike Smith had one start in Edmonton, but I actually took that out and added Koskinen's start before that. Freddie Anderson actually has more saves than Koskinen does in his last
Oh, okay.
4 games. So
Cool.
that to me, that quality may not be there. I don't think he's had the same quality of tasks, but I match him shot for shot is pretty impressive when Edmonton's defense is kind of holy and allows a lot of shots on net.
Yeah, kind of holy. Yeah. All right. Cool.
My second star of the week is this one was a bit of a debate, but I went with Philip Forsberg.
Yeah.
One was because he had the 5-point game, and the other guy I was actually debating was the guy who went head to head that very same game. 5 points was Jonathan Huberdeau.
I consider both those guys. The reason I
Yeah.
didn't give the notch to Forsberg was because they've just been losing.
True.
And then for easily could have went with Huberdeau. I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, the difference maker is that, like I've said many times, if it's the same player but one hits more, or it's the same player but one will drop the gloves in a time of need versus one that just stays away from that stuff, I'll take the more physical, or the guy that will go through the mud if he has to when needed.
Mm-hmm.
And Forsberg had 22 hits. Huberdeau had 7. So to me, that is a lot more of a contribution than Huberdeau. So once I looked at some of the peripherals, it was an easy choice. But at first, I did debate between going Forsberg or Huberdeau.
Mm-hmm.
For the first star, I also picked Matthews.
Yeah.
For, like I said, 4th in shots on goal during the week. He had 5 goals, 2 game winners, like you said. Just watching him, just as a Leafs fan, he's clearly the best player the Leafs have ever had. I mean, I can't. I maybe I shouldn't say ever had, because they have such a long history.
Yeah.
But in the modern era, ever since there was 24 plus teams before the last 2 expansions or whatever,
Yeah.
like just more so than us, like when we were born, like probably since the Leafs have won a cup last, is the best player to wear the uniform. And I'm also like, it's a lot, because like I'm a Mats guy. Mats was my boy. He was an idol for me growing up, like both in and outside of hockey.
Yep.
I took a lot of stuff from him, and he was beyond hockey for me. So to recognize Matthews as a more skilled player than him is saying a lot for me. But yeah, he just has his way to just take over a game. And like the other day, I was watching the power play, and 3 times on the same power play, he clearly wasn't in tune. He was making kind of silly passes that he was forcing. He was kind of playing a bit globetrottery-ish when he should have just played stronger, which I don't mind from time to time, specifically on the power play. But he just all of a sudden turned on a switch, and then that was like 2 minutes before they scored the 2 goals against Vancouver, and they went bang bang.
Yeah.
And the similar thing happened when they did the same thing against Montreal last night. Matthews wasn't clicking, nothing was going on. Montreal had a couple of chances, and then bang bang, and it was just he just has a way to change the game with that quick release and that quick shot. He needs no room. And the thing that impresses me most about him is the first year where he came in and had the success he had, he shot the puck a different way. There's actually videos out there showing how he changed his shot. I can't really go into detail. I don't know the details really about it, but basically said he felt he was limited in how he could get the shot off. And he felt that if he changed the mechanisms or mechanics of a shot, that he could become better and more precise and whatever. So one summer, he redesigned his whole shooting mechanism. A sniper who's already more elite than almost everyone in the NHL recognized, hey, I can go to another level if I just change these things. To me, that shows the commitment to being able to improve on different layers.
Yeah.
And only the best of the best have that capabilities, like the Crosbys, like that. So like I think the sky's the limit for him. I was considering going with Marner just because he went with Matthews, but I just felt it wasn't
like I said, I could have went with a bunch of different Leafs. I try to, when I do it, try to have a different player too. Marner was definitely in there too. I think we gave it to him the first week. He's having a hell of a season. Yeah.
For me, like I won't lie, I feel like I could sooner do what Marner does than what Matthew does. I do not have a shot like Matthews. I do not. I mean, I'm not obviously saying I'm a good hockey player or anything, just personally comparing, right? Like I've always stated, like I believe I'm a playmaker. I always like to see the ice and move the puck around, and to see a guy like Matthews go in and have that shot.
Yeah.
I would be the guy that would want to pass him the puck and get all the credit for setting him up. So like to watch a guy have that skill to me is more impressive than somebody who moved the puck around, even though I think somebody who can move the puck around can make more other players better.
Yeah.
Like I think playmakers can bring lesser players up to a higher level, but sniper players are just better than
snipers make the
peers.
money. Yeah, like that's what the kids
Yeah.
they like when playing the video games. They like the snipers, all that stuff. I hear you.
Yeah.
But yeah, that wraps up the 3 stars of the
Sure.
week. All right.
Now you know.
Anything else?
All
I
right.
think that pretty much sums up. It was pretty.
It's time to go watch some hockey.
Yeah, time to go watch Vasilevsky get lit up after giving him the 2nd star.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. So.
I'll jinx him.
Have a good night, man.
All right, cool, man.
Peace.
See ya.